Good afternoon, everyone. I am Dr. Rashnice Candy Tate. I'm with the Atlanta organizing branch of the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. And I'm here with
Robert Pinnell of Atlanta Metropolitan State College and a student member of the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, Atlanta branch.
And we're here in Atlanta, Georgia on August 30th, 2015. And please tell us your names and your relationship to each other and to the veteran that we're going to talk about today.
Yes, my name is Alice Church, and we will be discussing my grandfather and my grandmother, and particularly my father, who was in the First World War.
And your father's name?
My father's name was Fred Andrew Freese. That's F-R-E-E-S-E.
And we're friends here, so don't be nervous.
Okay.
And
Hi.
and we're here with, who is this person sitting next to you?
That is my daughter, Karon Church Williams.
And I am the granddaughter of Fred Freese
Wonderful.
and daughter of Alice Church.
Thank you all for letting us come into your home today. And Robert's going to ask some questions, and if I have questions, I'll interject with some. Robert, go ahead.
Okay. Well, first, how are you ladies doing today?
We're good.
Good,
Thank
good,
you, Robert.
When and where was Mr. Freese born?
He was born in, originally in Louisa, Kentucky, in the mountains of Kentucky.
And he was born in 1888, November of 1888.
Could you tell us a little about his parents and what they did?
Yes, his father was a farmer, and then that was doing when he was a slave on a farm.
And his father's name?
His father's name was Louis Freese. And I think Karen, his middle name was Andrew, wasn't it? Louis Andrew.
I don't know. I know yes, his middle name was Andrew.
Yeah, it's Louis Andrew Freese. And anyway, he was there on the farm as a slave.
Was the last name Freese actually given while he was at that farm organization?
No, he took the master's name, and that was Burgess. So he wasn't known as Louis Andrew Burgess. So after he got his freedom, he went down and he went to Louisa, Kentucky, and there was a good-sized river. I mean, it was large, but anyway, he started working on the steamboat going up and down the river, and the captain of the steamboat, his name was Freese, and he took Freese as his name. So that's how he came out to be Freese, F-R-E-E-S-E.
What about his mother?
My grandmother, her name was Amanda. And of course, she was on the Burgess farm, so she went as Burgess then. But of course, when she and Grandpa got married, of course, she became a Freese. And the interesting thing too, in one of my documents here, it listed everybody that was born in Louisa, Kentucky, and underneath that, it had owner George Burgess telling the world that she was a slave.
Did Mr. Freese have any siblings?
Yes, and that was my father, Fred Andrew Freese.
No, that was his son.
Yeah,
was his
but he
son.
said that he had any siblings.
Siblings?
Yes.
That means brothers or sisters.
Oh. No.
So he didn't have any
Yeah.
brothers and sisters?
Grandpa? No, because during that time, it was hard to trace really exactly who was kin to who. Some people said he did, and some people said he didn't. So, he didn't, as we know of, he didn't have any siblings. Granny, I hadn't even thought of that. Granny, it was a lot of relatives, because on that plantation, not plantation, on that farm, it was a lot of people in that small town of Louis, Kentucky. A lot of people were Burgesses, and that was the big farm where most of them came from. And in some way, all of them were some way related. So she, as I know of, that she did not have any sisters or brothers that I know of.
Would you happen to know what was being grown on the farm?
Corn and cattle, and I visited the farm, and after I was grown, and even my grandchildren, we saw where they even had the whipping post, and where they would whip the slaves, and it was a huge acreage. Right by the river, which is Big Sandy River. Was a huge farm, and they were very wealthy people. My grandfather helped build the farmhouse. He took the rock and things from the mountains and brought them down there and built beautiful, I saw this, the fireplaces and all of the house, the home. So I did see that home. It was of course, a huge 2-story structure.
Did your grandfather have more than one child? Who later became your father? Did your grandfather have more than one child?
Not as, I think maybe during that time it was very difficult to keep up who was cousin, who was uncles, and who what, because sometimes you call people. I remember one person, we called him Uncle Pete. Now I don't think that was my father's brother, but then it might have been. So I really don't know anything specifically. I don't have anything to say that he did have a brother or sister.
Okay. Could you tell us a little about what your father, Mr. Freese, was doing before he actually entered service?
Well, I think my dad was a man of all trades. He was the type that liked to start businesses, he liked to, one time he was in trading cars and trucks and things like that. And then at one time, well, I guess this was after he was in service though, that he and a friend even started bottling Coca-Cola. So he was a man of many trades. And the one that he did in later life was he he delivered freight and express for the C&O Railroad.
If you can recall, what would be which trade, I guess, he'd take up more frequently than any other? Like, what was he like really known for more than any other?
I would say with the freight and express, because see, we're talking about mountains and people, and my father was known as a man that could go up in the mountains and deliver a refrigerator or a stove, and he had no fear. And that was really a mark of really being a brave and resourceful person. So I think that was one of his best things, that some people remember him as a person that could handle in these situations. Because you see, you're talking about people with guns and all of that, plus being black.
Did he encounter any type of discrimination during those times, trying to go about what he was actually doing?
Well, he didn't express it. He really never expressed anything like that. My dad didn't. He went about his work very seriously. But they knew that Fred Freese always had a gun in his truck. And he did not back away. So he knew it was out there. But they knew that he was a man of resources.
And I think there was, during that time, you had your laws, and you also had men like him that had the respect. But I think where the racism comes in and where Fred Freese never really talked about it was like he gave money to build the sidewalk. Never been recognized. The first sidewalk the town ever had, and we had the receipts. Never been recognized, never anything like that. During the time when people were trying to take land from the blacks in the city, he had stacks and stacks of deeds where he, had them pay him. I mean, he paid for their taxes so that they could keep their property. So I think the greatest thing for me with him was his ability to succeed, not just survive doing those types of things, but to be able to succeed. Another thing that he did was he worked in the bank. His father worked in the bank. And we have bank books. And I always wondered, why did they know so much about banking? And he was a janitor at the bank.
My grandfather.
Yeah, the grandfather was a janitor at the bank, but he passed it on to his son. My grandfather had the bank books. My grandfather passed it on to his wife. My grandmother was an accountant, and all of them were like that. So I guess when we talk about that whole situation with the man and with the racism and things, we talk about a man who was able to think through it and succeed.
Yes, and it always amazes me for my grandmother. We have the deeds here where my grandmother's name was on some of the deeds of property, and that was back in the 1800s.
Very unusual for a woman.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. That showed you how my grandfather had a respect for her. Mm-hmm. And that just, when we found that just sent chills to my body. How much he respected, we called her Granny. That he put her name on the deed.
Have you ever?
And this is Amanda we're speaking of,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And did she have was she using Burgess did she have a maiden name or
No,
middle name?
but no, she didn't, of course, she signed, she was a Burgess,
Okay.
because she took the master's
Right,
name.
that's okay.
But then, of course, when her and Grandpa married, of course, it
Changed
was
the
Freese.
Gotcha, all right.
Have you ever heard any personal stories about, you know, some of the great things that he did back then?
Who,
Fred?
Yeah.
Fred? No, but he did a lot of things for people. Because like I said, him with the trucking business and all, if somebody was trying to move from the holler, you know, in Kentucky, you know, we had hollers, what we call hollers, and that was just places that were in the mountains, and they call them hollers.
No, I can get to in the hollow.
Yeah, hollers. But anyway, but if they didn't have any money, enough money, Daddy would go and get, get the furniture and help them move. And our house in Louisa was noted for the place where people came. And that means black, white, or whoever. I'll give you an instance that the woman down a couple of streets away, anyway, her doctor called my mother and said that she needed some rest away from her home, her family, and she needed to be someplace where she could get some quiet. And asking my mom would keep her for a couple of weeks or more. And would you believe this young white woman lived in our house for 3 weeks away from her family. And he said, and Lucille, don't let her husband or anyone in the house to see her. She needs to rest. And I guess that's the kind of home that I grew up in.
And understand that this woman's husband was a white man.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny thing is I knew them, their grandchildren and I played together. And he wasn't the type of man that you could just say, don't go and see her. You know, they had that kind of abusive relationship. So, you know, that was not just, you know, just a polite type of interaction. It took a lot for them as a black family to step into a relationship like that between a white man and a white woman. So sometimes when we tell the stories, it has so many layers to it that relates to the beauty of who my grandfather was. My grandfather, and you talk about stories, you know, I just, when we go to Kentucky, they tell us so many things about him, but I think the big thing is he was always in his truck. You know, his truck was everything. He was in his truck. You know, he would go around and paint barns in his truck, you know, and he would have, you know, pigs, throw a pig in the back of his truck. So all of his stories, all the stories was, you know, Grandpa in his truck. And the respect that he had for my grandmother, because she was the one who had that house where people could go to see and go and stay. And she cooked for everybody. And he supported everything that she did. And add one thing. They got married like back then. My grandmother was what, 16? 15, 16.
Mm-hmm.
He waited until she was in her 20s before they had kids. My mom was the flower girl at their 25th wedding anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the kind of man he was. He loved her, but he waited for her to be a more mature woman. And back then, 15, 16 was mature, you know, for others, but they had that type of relationship.
You know what kind of truck you drove? Ford,
Oh,
Chevy, you know, or
No, I don't remember the type of truck. It was, it wasn't a real big truck. Because like I said, my father, one time he came home and he decided that he would, like you say, he would this business of whitewashing stuff, you know, even barns and things like that. Well, that kept it secure, or I guess kept the
Kept her from wearing.
and whatever. And so he was always coming up with something to, something very interesting to do with his truck.
Was he actually enlisted, or was he drafted into the military?
He was drafted. I'm pretty sure he was drafted.
You happen to have some type of documentation
Yes.
to say he was drafted?
Yes, I have, let's see. That was his discharge.
I do hereby appoint him corporal of
That's-
company.
That's when he was corporal.
Okay.
That
He
was
became a corporal here. So she has like his different, this is when he was a corporal. These are his local board for official business. These are kind of like his cards telling him where he's assigned,
Yes.
and who he is.
Yeah, this one says order number, class 4, and all of those.
Let's see.
And the troop.
Oh, this has his bunk number and compartment, so where he is to his returning ship. So this is, and the interesting thing here, it does give on the back the directions on what you're supposed to do when you get on the ship. So that was when he was in France. So these are just kind of like papers of when he did have to go away.
What branch of the military did he serve in?
Army.
Mm-hmm.
Do you actually know what year he actually entered the service?
Okay, we're trying to.
I'm gonna take your time.
Wait. Because some of these are not.
Go ahead, Mom.
This was in, like this one says, notice of classification. This is on, this one is
1918, so most of our
1918, all of it, July 1st, 1918.
Was he happy about being
Okay,
drafted?
so he was discharged in 1922, and this is a paper where my grandmother asked someone to help out. This is, "Dear sir, I am just in receipt of your letter, April 28th, in behalf of Corporal Fred Freese, 801 Pioneer Infantry, has written to me about this young man, and have assured him that I would give him great pleasure to be of assistance possible in bringing about his discharge. I have written to General Pershing, Commanding General of the American Army forces, urging in the strongest terms possible that he be given release, and I hope that he may find it possible to grant Freese discharge. So his actual discharge was 1922. So it looks like he probably went in 1918.
Okay.
And this was written in 1919, April 10th, 1919.
But he wasn't, what they were trying to do, I think my grandfather had sent in a letter wanting him released to come home and help with the family, or or whatever, one of those type of letters. See, my grandfather was very resourceful because he knew the people to contact.
I've never heard of that before. Yeah.
Yes, so my grandfather was with it, right? So I think he was trying to get his son from over there. But it didn't work. They didn't give him an early release.
And I had heard something about, say, like, your only son is not supposed to go to war.
Oh, okay.
If you're
I
an
don't know
only
that.
child,
Yeah.
I think that may have been
Right,
World
the
War
only
II.
child.
when they-
I was about to say, it might have been later than they
Yeah.
imposed that, okay.
But yes, so, yeah, he was very resourceful.
And how did the family come across this photo that the one in the chair of Fred Freese?
I don't know, it was always there.
Mm-hmm.
It was always in the family.
But you were sharing a story with me earlier about, I guess you didn't know the
Oh, yes.
decorations on the
Yeah,
frame.
they had the frame upside down.
I didn't know those were flags and the.
But then when I took to have it refurnished and whatever, then they told me, they said, Miss, it's really upside down. It should be up like this instead of this up there. But it was always a place in our house.
You tell me his feelings about being drafted?
No, I don't think Daddy, because he has an adventurous nature about him. So I don't think it really affected him of going to war. Although he never talked about it. Because it was very interesting growing up in a household with like my father, with him not talking about the war or anything that happened. And then my grandmother, who I lived with, and until I guess I was about 5 or 6, I think, when she passed. But nobody ever heard Granny talk about slavery when she was a slave at the Burgess farm.
Tell them when she was senile though, she used to run away.
Later on when she was, I guess she was in her 80s, so I guess almost 90. Anyway, every now and then she would go and get a stick, and she would put some of her belongings in them, and put it in a handkerchief or a scarf-like thing, and tie it on a stick. And she would walk up the street, and somebody would ask her, "Where you going, Granny?" And she said, "I'm going home." And I think that was what she did when she was a slave.
And also what I just found out recently through a really close friend of the family, what Mom is saying is that some of then, with my grandfather, they didn't share a lot with the female people in the family. So her brothers knew more about his feelings with the war and things like that than what she did. 'Cause I remember Uncle Andy used to talk about him when he was in France.
Yes.
So, I mean, and unfortunately they're past, but it appeared that he shared more of his thoughts and feelings with them. The only thing I really remember Mom or Uncle Andy telling me was his feelings towards the Red Cross, because they didn't help the black soldiers. and especially with them not giving blood or anything like that for the black soldiers. So he was like, you know, don't give to the Red Cross. So, you know, so we got kind of bits and pieces of that, but never really from my mom what happened. But my uncles were could more tell about what happened to him. And I just, when my uncle passed, I was talking to some of the guys, and they were talking about how he used to get aspirin and a soda, you know, and drinking, just different things as men would see each other different from when he came back than what he was doing before he left.
Yeah.
So that, you know, we had, he was a different man before it appeared, when he came back, because of some of the things that they were saying was going on with him health-wise.
Yeah, I think, yeah, he never talked about it, but, and my mom even expressed, she felt that something happened over there because of his health. She felt that something went wrong with his health when he was over there. We said overseas then.
Would you happen to know in particular what that may have been, or was
No.
just...
I don't know, but he
did have TB, right? And they took care of that.
Yeah, that was after though. But and he had somewhat of a limp. But they never talked about it. So I don't know that limp, like in his walking, whether that was part of his service. But he had very, very strong feelings against, like the hospitals, the VA hospitals. VA. He refused to go to VA hospital. So I guess maybe something happened over there that we never knew about.
So I guess would you say he was kind of shell-shocked when he came back?
Not shell-shocked, no, it wasn't shell-shocked. I think he was, I think it had something to do with his gait in some way. I don't know. Something happened.
His health.
His health.
Physical health more than his
Physical
mental
health. Physical health more than his mental health.
Okay. So, has he ever talked about his experience in training camp or his time over, like has he been in any conflict or anything?
No, like Karen said.
He just didn't really feel comfortable with it?
No, they didn't, he never talked about it to especially in during that time, men didn't relate a lot of things like that to women. Moms or whoever, that was men's talk.
So I guess I'm speaking with your uncles and your brothers. Did he have any kind of special training or anything? Like, was he a specialist, or what was his actual role in the Army?
Because he was in the, what was that he was in?
He was in infantry.
He was in infantry. So
he
that,
was on the ground.
huh?
Yeah, he was on the ground. So they didn't
Yeah.
really have.
No.
He wasn't a cook or anything like that. So he
And the
was
corporal, that's a elevated rank, isn't it?
Yeah. He went from private to corporal.
Yeah.
So it was just one step above.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And we've seen the documents of him going to corporal. Did you?
Yeah, I just read it. We just read
Oh,
it.
this
Okay,
one right
okay.
here. Yeah, we just read this one right here. And we also have some of the war ration books that they had during that time.
Was that during that time
Or
or?
was that World War II?
No, that was 2, wasn't it?
Yeah. You keep
Yeah,
on-
that was
keep on
2.
going, that was 2.
That was 2. Because I don't think they had ration books in 1.
I do recall you saying that he served in France. Were there any other places that he served?
No,
Overseas?
that was the only place.
Was there any place particular in France?
Wait, let me see.
I don't know that, I didn't see that.
So you have, these are, I know there were note cards, there were.
Oh, yeah, and it says somewhere in France, so he didn't know either. I have arrived at this port safely. Now, this one, he was in Newport News, Virginia. Have just arrived at this port safely, and I am well. My stay here will be too short, probably 2 or 3 days, for you to try to see me. Our program is going so quickly to camps near home for discharge. If, however, anything develops, necessities with communicating with me, telegraph. So this was 1919. This was when he was getting ready to come home. Now, this one you can't really read on the back. This one. But the one that I saw, he had somewhere in France. This is a Christmas from 1918. And this is the one where it says somewhere in France. Now, it doesn't have a stamp or anything. It doesn't have a stamping on it that would show. You know how usually you look for a stamp?
Mm-hmm.
But no, it doesn't have a stamp or anything
Yeah.
that would show where in France he was.
Can you turn it around?
Mhm.
There we go. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
And this was May 1919, and this was in France. So that, yeah, so we know he's saying somewhere in France. We just don't know where.
Oh, it's France. That's good enough.
yeah, this was the one that when he was on the ship, the returning ship,
Mhm.
and what to do.
Were there any friendships or anything that he built while serving that he actually held on to once he got out of the army?
Not as I know of. Not as I know of. I remember he had one friend, Bud and Daisy's.
But
No, it wouldn't have been Bud. Bud's father was in the service at the same time.
oh, okay.
But that's the only person that I know in Louisa that was in.
So the other picture we have is Bud's father.
Oh, we have another picture.
Yeah, we have another army picture, so that must be Bud's father.
What's his actual name?
Do you know his actual name? What was Bud's actual name?
He went by Bud, huh?
Yeah,
The neighborhood name.
What was your last name?
I can't remember. I can't remember their last name now, but I'm sure I have it on, cause I sort of cared for Bud and Daisy, before they passed.
But I think we do have a picture of his, that must be his dad. That other smaller picture,
Mm-hmm.
that must be his dad.
Uh-huh. His name was, Jones. I think, was it the Jones, Miss Sarah's?
Oh, I don't know.
But I'll have to think of that one.
Okay.
It was Jones. His last name was Jones. Yeah, their last names were Jones. So that's the only person that I knew was in service at the same time.
So, were there any Was there anything that any habits he picked up over there that he brought home, like maybe doing things a certain way that he picked up over there?
I don't think so. Not really. Because in France, no, because, you know, we're talking about growing up in the hills of Kentucky, so it would be quite I don't know, too many things in France that he could pick up to bring back.
And then we have to look at Mom's perspective, because if he came back in 1922, Mom wasn't born until 1934. So whatever he would have done would have already been just a norm, you know, within the family. So it's just kind of hard to put that, you know, in that type of perspective.
Yeah, and then I don't think Daddy did bring back anything from France.
Then when did he marry and then have kids? Was he married during his military service or came back?
He was, let's see. They got married, I can answer that. They got married in 1915.
$1915?
It says right here.
And I didn't mark
And
that.
you know, we have their 25th, yeah, that's about right, their 25th. Yep, January 5th, 1915. Was that their wedding anniversary, January?
Yeah, I was in their 50th
Yeah.
wedding
anniversary. So they got married January 5th, 1915.
And he married, I'm sorry, I didn't write down.
He married Lucille Stewart.
Freese.
Well, it was Lucille Stewart's her main name.
And so this is the,
That was my grandma.
your mother,
Mm-hmm.
but
My mother.
that he waited until she was
Mm-hmm.
of age.
Yeah.
I'm getting the story together now.
Yeah. So you can imagine they were, you know, married 1915. So that's part of what happened. Married 1915. He went away to war 1918. You know, 3 years later, and came back. Now, Mom's oldest brother had to been born in 1930. Well, Uncle Louis was how many years older than you? 5 years.
Yeah, about at least
So 1929.
years or more.
He's only 5 years older than you.
Really?
Yeah, he wasn't that much
He
older.
always seemed like he's older.
Because Uncle Andy, well, I have it right here, so I'll let you all know. Uncle Louis was born in 1928.
That was the first.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to help us fill in a little bit of this story because you and we all got to meet a little bit beforehand. Now there is a family home that we haven't talked about yet, where all of these records
Yes.
surfaced, and why we're here today and you're able to tell this story.
Okay,
So kinda-
and I would love
kinda
to
loop
show a
that in.
picture of the family home. Okay, now we have talked about Fred Freese. I like to say Fred is like the Louis Freese, who is Fred's dad. I like to say he's the foundation of the family because Louis is the one who did leave the plantation, and Louis.
No, I don't like that word plantation, but that's okay.
The farm.
He left the farm plantation that he was. So this is Louis. So
Can you hold that up?
So Louis again was the one who worked in the bank. Louis was the one who actually bought the property for the home that is standing right now. Louis and Amanda, and I have the deed also, Louis and Amanda bought the property, had the deeds put in their name, and they were able to continue on with their family. Amanda, which I have her death, she died, she was 88 when she died, Lewis was 79. And remembering Lewis was a lot older than Amanda. And because actually Lewis came from Petersburg, Kentucky. Then he was on the farm plantation, and then he left and did the house. So,
Can you hold that article up?
and Mom, I want you to go through here and see if you, as I talk, see if you see, oh, this is a good picture. Okay, so this, I think this is a very good image. This is the smokehouse to the house, so Lewis built the smokehouse to the house, and this is kind of a picture of the family. This is Mom, this is Fred Freese, this is Lucille, and these...
Can you point to Mom again?
And this is Mom.
Okay.
And these are her two brothers, and these are relatives. So Lewis and Amanda, and imagine you had all of these people that were released from these major farm plantations and came down to Louisa, and they all were related, and they bought property, and they thrived in an environment where there was predominantly, they were still very much the minority, but they was predominantly white. But they were able to acquire and keep much of their assets. So Fred married Lucille. Fred continued that tradition of acquiring assets. They bought assets from Kentucky to Michigan to Chicago. They were able to put their kids through school from selling pieces, college, from selling pieces of this property to send their kids to college and afford to do the other things that they need to do. Lucille, who was there with the family, and Lucille came from Virginia. So, Blacksburg, Virginia. So Lucille came and she inbred into the family, and Lucille kept the tradition up. When Fred passed, Lucille was still the strong arm of the town. She was the person that maintained the property. She collected the rent. She made sure that everything was moved soundly. An example was my brother wanted to play baseball, and he was there for the summer, and they wouldn't let him on a team because he was black, and he ran to Lucille. Now the baseball field was part owned, the land, Lucille owned it. So Lucille said, if you want a baseball field, my grandson will play on that team. My brother played baseball while I received all the frozen Cokes I wanted when I attended the game.
But what year was this?
This was, oh, that's astounding. This was probably 1972, 73.
Not so long ago.
Not so long ago that you would imagine. I would say at the latest, I would say, definitely the earliest would be 69. That's the very earliest, because I was old enough to, walk around or whatever. But you had, and eventually many of the families began to leave. Lucille passed in 1979 and kept much of the property. Then we get back to the house. Lucille kept everything in that house. Every single tax receipt from 1884, I think it is, from 1886, where they purchased the property. And she kept every receipt, she kept every deed they ever had. She had a whole wall of dishes. Lucille would go shopping, and she maintained the knowledge of what things were worth. And she would act like she didn't know, like, oh, what is this piece of glass? I don't know what this is. And then the white guy would say, oh, I don't know either. And then try to, negotiate a price, thinking she didn't know, so she would always go down. So she was able to accumulate dishes and furniture, antique. I remember growing up and we used to go to auctions and just, she knew what everything was worth, and she would have it all organized. And going back to Lucille, the way she educated herself was she had a dictionary and a crossword puzzle. And she read the dictionary and she did crossword puzzles. And that's how she knew how to write. That's how she knew her vocabulary. She could read a legal document like nobody else. So she passed her knowledge on to my mom. And my mom did us a favor where my mom let us experience the whole Louisiana, Kentucky. Every summer we went there. And we were able to share in all of that. And that's why I know so much about my grandfather, because the people there shared so much with us. And I played with a lot of the grandkids and the great-grandkids. And the reason why I was able to do that was because of that respect that they all had. What else do you want to?
Oh, when my grandmother died, the article we just read about her being a slave, and they had this in the paper. She remembered that during the Civil War, when enemy raiders came through the Big Sandy Valley, members of the Burgess family tied a sack of gold, had sacks of gold upon her clothing as the safest place to hide it, while the raiders were ransacking the place. So we always said, we said, for Granny and Grandpa to have this money just out of slavery or whatever, that we think that maybe, because see, both of them were on that farm, right? So we said that we think, now this is our theory, we have no proof of this, but we think that maybe some of that gold that was tied onto my grandmother got lost. Because we could never figure out how they could accumulate this. I mean, when we were looking at the deeds of the property in the 1800s, we have them right here. We had proof of it, of the deeds of them buying this property. I mean, it was $200 and $300 and $400, and that's a lot of money. But they did. And when my grandfather died, he had left us at least 7 rent houses. And one of the houses was a 7-bedroom house that he had acquired in another place. So that was what was that. And he left it, and then my father, this man here, he was the one that was able to encourage and to upkeep and all of that, the financial thing and all of that, so that he was able to help in educating us. And see, the thing about you talking about education, see, I went to, we had a one-room school and one teacher. And they did not have high school for blacks. You were, after the 8th grade, when you finished the 8th grade, you had to go away to school. There was a boarding school in Louisville, Kentucky that you could go to, and the state or county would pay your tuition and room and board, but you were responsible with, with the transportation and things like that. The family was. And so my brothers, both of them graduated from Lincoln Ridge, and it was outside of Louisville, Kentucky. And it was an excellent school, but I did not go there because my brothers didn't want me to go there. So they said that everybody wasn't like my brothers there. But anyway, so I ended up going to high school in Akron, Ohio. And I must say it was some transition coming from Louisa, Kentucky. And I was the only one graduated from the school in Louisa, because I was the only one in my grade from the 1st grade to the 8th grade.
So you're valedictorian.
Yes, I was the star at the graduation. But anyway, so when I got to Akron, of course, I had an extremely Hill accent. But I was so happy to see so many black kids. I was walking to school. The school was integrated, but anyway, in my neighborhood, there was black kids. And I was so happy to see so many black kids, right? And I was just so happy that morning, and I was walking, and they were saying hi and hi, and then I said hi, and so one of the girls said, oh, my throat is so sore, and it hurts, and whatever. So I said, well, the best thing for that is a good dose of soda. The kids fell in the street. They just laughed and laughed. And when I got to school, of course, they told all the black kids, this girl with this accent, with this Hill accent. And so anyway, when I tell that story, I said, see, it's Charlie Pride. See, that was before Charlie Pride, so they didn't know nothing about Hill people. So anyway, they would come up to me and they said, Alice, say something. Just say anything. We don't care what you say, just say. And so I did my first speech. The teacher afterwards said, Alice, what are you doing Thursday after school? I will help you. And so with my aunt's help and her friends and all, I was able to work on the Hill accent. But it wasn't that I was ashamed of it. I was a very proud person, right? But it was because it was just too different. And but it was something, and I was thinking about the story of how people said, didn't you feel bad? And I said, no, I didn't feel bad. It didn't hurt me. I didn't cry. And then I thought, you know why? Because I came from such a loving family. I thought I was the best things since hot chocolate. So that's the reason I didn't. They said, no, I didn't cry. When they come up and ask me to say something, I would say something in my Hill accent, and smile, because I felt so good about Alice Freese. And that's what I mean. If you have a loving family that teaches you who you are and that you are somebody, and that will carry you through whatever you have to go through. But But I'm reminded of the you know, a good dose of sodium wine.
I do have a question. I'm gonna ask you a question, but I'm just curious. When you made the trip back to the plantation, did you ever meet anyone from the Burgess family?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Farm, I'm sorry. Farm.
Farm plantation.
Farm.
Oh, yes, yeah. Well, you tell. I mean, Doc Burgess was like the great grandnephew, because Doc Burgess was older. It was grandnephew, and my grandmother would make me when I was there in the summertime. I would have to go, and Doc Burgess was like this extremely intelligent man. He was a surgeon. He was just like very intelligent, but had a little marble loose somewhere, right? So when his mom died, he had like, the house was full of like all these dead plants and stuff from the funeral from his mom, okay? And then he used to have his beard, and Grandma would go over there to kind of, you know, help out clean up and everything, and I would have to sit with him. And he used to read me poetry. And I'm talking not just like one, but I would have to sit there for 2 hours and hear his poetry. And sometimes it would be about me, sometimes it would be about age, it would be about flowers. Mostly it would be about his mother. But, and as you hear the Burgess name come up all the time, you had white Burgesses. You know, so we mixed, you know, it was all kind of mixed in. And Mom has the slave receipt of Amanda Freese, Amanda Freese's mom. Yeah, Amanda Freese's mom has the papers of Amanda Freese's mom, because Amanda Freese's mom was the one who had that connected with Burgess's great-grandfather to have Amanda Freese. Amanda Freese, yeah, she was the first slave on the plantation of the starting their line. So his granddaughter or something, the family gave Mom the papers. So the farmhouse just recently was knocked down. It was stacked stone. It was absolutely beautiful. But like I said, the inside of it was kind of rugged because he was basically a hermit. You know, he didn't go out. You know, people came in and took care of him. He didn't go out or anything, but he was there. And when he passed, you know, they destroyed the home. But they still, Mom's. I don't know a whole lot of farms that have whipping posts in front of the house. I don't know. You know, but so she wants to call it a farm. That's fine. But they still had the whipping posts in front. I mean, everything, and that's the amazing thing about this place, is that before the meth came in, I'm just going to read, before meth came in, everything was so the same. You know, all the houses were the same. And you could go in and you knew and you could feel the history. Now, different people had different versions of the history, but you could see the history there.
Yes, Dr. Burgess was an outstanding surgeon there in the hills or in Kentucky and whatever. And but after his mother died, he gave up. He gave up the surgery, and he's the one that told me about. I was talking about my grandfather, how he built the house there, and the stone. He showed me the stone and everything that he, but you know, like brought down and all. And he talked it. He said a few words, wrote a poem when my mother died. And he was a kind man. But when we saw my husband, when we went out to the farmhouse, and we saw this there, and my husband said, what was that used for? And he said, oh, we used to put the horses there. But my husband knew that was a whipping post. So it was a lot of history there. And but you know, the recent generations, they sold most of the property. But I was corresponding with one of the heirs of the Burgess. But when I was doing some history of the family, and I said too much because I told this a young woman, other woman, I told her, I wrote her that I had just saw the article about Granny and all, and I saw where it, I have it in writing where it has the list of all the people that were born there in Louisa, and under her, right by her name, it says, under her name, it says, owner, George Burgess. And how it hurt me. I told her that, you know, it made me cry. I knew that Granny was a slave, but to see it in a document saying owner, it just hurt me. And of course, she didn't correspond with me anymore. And I think too, it was during the time when some family was suing
Jefferson.
Thomas
Jefferson's family.
Yeah, whoever, about trying to get some property or whatever for that, you know, the ownership. And I think maybe she thought maybe I was striving or trying to get some money from
Out of the family.
out of the family. But that was because her mother, who I knew, that lived near us, that was she collected everything. I mean, you know, all kinds of history and everything else. And so I know that Mary had that of her mother's that would have helped me a lot in my research. But she wouldn't correspond anymore.
Were there any other members of your family that have served in the military?
My dad.
I mean, other than, oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
Her husband.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little about that?
Yes. That was when, you know, when we were in college, you had to serve because you was exempt for the draft when you were in college. That
This
was,
is a great story.
you know, you were exempt from draft. So after you graduated from college, then you had to serve. And so happened, you know, he had to serve. Of course, we got
Your
Luther
Church.
Luther Church. So he had to serve.
This was 1956.
1956. And so we decided to get married before he went into service. And so we did. We got married in August of 1956.
How long did you serve for? I'm sorry.
This is tell him the story. It's connected to my grandfather. Tell him what happened when Grandpa found out. When they found out that Dad had to serve, and Mom came back home and lived with her mom and dad, with Grandpa, with Freese. And Mom was upset because he had to serve and didn't know where he was gonna go. So, but it wasn't a war during that time, but you still might have had to go, you might have to go somewhere far. So anyway, again, the Freese family put in a word and wrote a letter. And my dad tells the story so well. He's like, he was, and my dad and his best friend, they all had to go in all together. So they were all standing around, and my dad says they were calling out names and telling people, you know, they had to go.
Oh, let me tell it.
Okay.
Okay. No, I was home. I was home, right? And we just got married, and you know, he got in the service. And he wrote me a letter, my husband, Luther, wrote me a letter and said he didn't know, but he may be sent someplace overseas or whatever, for something was going on or beginning to go on or whatever, or something was happening. And so when I got the letter, I just started crying. And so my dad said, Al, what's wrong? I said, well, church is saying that he may have to go to Europe or someplace, something is going on, and they made him, and he said, what? He said, no. I said, but Daddy, that's what he said. He said, no, he's not going, he's not going anyplace. He said, Lucille, come here. Tell you, okay, baby, tell him what I, so I told my mom what was going on. He said, okay, Lucille, get something done. My mother made a contact, right, in Louisa, and she came back. She said, Alice, get the information, get his number and everything, and where's he stationed, and all the information, and your marriage license, and all of that, and give it to me. That's what I did. So when they was calling up when he was finished his, you know, what do you call it,
Boot camp.
yeah, all of that, this training, they would count out where they were sending people, and they were saying, you know, Johnson, England or someplace, and this one over there, and blah, blah, blah. And they said, Luther Church, Chicago. And everybody said, man, Chicago! So my husband was stationed in an army base near Chicago, but he worked at a hospital, government hospital in Chicago, his whole tour of duty.
So didn't have to go out of the country.
Didn't have to go out of the country, and it was great because his major was biology and all, so it all fit in. And for there he was ended up in research, medical research. But my mother went to some of the people in Louisa. Mr. Rice I know there's one distinguished man in Louisa that had connections with the government.
So this is a letter to the senator?
No.
Or this is something, okay.
No, I mean, this was for my grandfather.
Okay, all right.
So, to answer your question about the effects that the war had on my grandfather, my uncles never had to serve. They were the same age. You understand what I'm saying? So, to answer your question, my grandfather, for whatever reason, was like, you know what, I don't want anybody else, because that's what he did for my dad. Like, you're not going over, you're going to stay here so you can take care of my daughter. And the reason why that's so funny is because they had a story about my grandfather telling my dad, when my dad asked my mom to marry, asking permission to marry my mom, my grandfather told him that I'll never be a poker in your fire, that I'll never interfere. But then when she told him that he had to go away, Grandpa was like, I'll take this one time and I'm gonna poke in your fire. So, you know, just kind of, you know, I guess sometimes our history gets a little blurry because of the times and because of some of the emotion that is involved there. That, you know, you really can't, you know, you see the effects. You may not know what happened, but you kind of see the effects. Also, I want to talk about Lincoln. I have these books here, and these are books from Lincoln High School. And This school, these are
Is this
their,
in Louisa? Or
now this is the one that Mom
Okay.
was talking about, that the county paid for you.
To go
In
to.
Louisa, Kentucky, that you couldn't go to you couldn't go to high school there, and you had to go to a boarding school. You had to leave to go to school. This is their yearbooks. But they had Whitney Young was a teacher, and then became president, and then ran the school after becoming a teacher. So very prestigious. I mean, they still have alumni meetings and get together and all that type of stuff. So, you know, the people is,
Can I see the cover?
yes.
Yeah, that's,
So, and I think these are 1945,
that's,
46.
see, that's where both of my brothers went.
So, you know, so they all went there, and it was amazing because I saw, they would send the parents these cards telling them if they made honor roll, you know. I mean it's just so cool. This is 1947. Mrs. Freese, we are happy to inform you that your son has made the honor roll for the second 6 weeks period. We know you are proud of the progress made by your son. Please help us to keep him encouraged. You know, that's really, I mean, you know, I think that's really cool. That's really something to be said. And then here's their commencement program. So, and I don't really know how many students. These are all the students that graduated from there. So they usually had a pretty nice sized class there.
And they were encouraged too in going to college, you know, at Kentucky State College there. But the other thing too, getting back to that one-room school that I went to, sometimes our field trips, because see, when I was there, it was only 9 people in the school, right? That we would go, the teacher had connections to West Virginia State College, some relatives. So she would say, well, they're having a concert at concert, and we can go up and stay with Aunt Betty or whoever. So we were exposed, you know, what kids could go. We were going to the Kentucky State College. Now we're in the mountains, but we were visiting the colleges. So we had, you know, I mean, we were exposed. We were in the hills and the mountains, but we did have exposures to where we could go, and that you should. And I'll tell you one more story about about that, is that the way one time we had a concert, invited the group from Ashland, Kentucky, which was 36 miles from us, to come and do a concert at the White High School. And one of the persons that played there she came and was talking to all 9 of us. And so I asked her, I said, I just love the way you played. I just love it, because that's what I love to play. And so she said, I said, are you in school? And she said, no, I'm still in a high school. She said, but I plan to go to Fisk University. And I said, oh, really? I said, well, where is that? And she said, Nashville, Tennessee. So when I got home, I told my mother, I said, I'm going to Fisk University. And so my mother said, well, where is that? I said, Nashville. And that's where I went. When I went to Akron, Ohio, I sent for the information, the catalog, to go to Fisk University. So I'm saying
But
that,
wait a minute, tell her who the person was that you heard play.
Joyce Johnson, Dr. Joyce Johnson.
Spelman.
It's spelled,
All
yes.
right.
See, so I'm saying is that,
That's down the street.
yes, but that is the way kids can be exposed, because I wanted to take piano lessons when I was younger, and the white teachers wouldn't teach me. And so my dad would put me on the train on Saturday morning, and I would go to Ashland, Kentucky, which is about 36 and 40 miles. And I would go and take piano lessons at the high school there. And then I'd get off, then I'd have my lessons, and then I'd have maybe about 2 hours before the other train, get the train back home. And so I would go and visit my teacher, because my teacher lived in Ashland. And I would go visit her. And then I'd get back on the train by myself. But see, then the trains were segregated, so the conductors and everybody knew me, right? So it wasn't any, but that, and then after that, I found a teacher across the river, so that would teach me. And so me and my friend, we would go across the bridge and pay toll bridge, because when you walk you had to pay toll too. And we would go there on Saturday and take piano lessons. So to me, I had a beautiful life.
Sounds that way. And I'm hearing the importance of education to your family.
Oh yes,
That
yes.
Fred Freese and
Mhm,
his father who was instilled in.
Yes.
Am I wrong? What are, do you have some special story of why education was so important to them and to you?
Yes, it was so important because the exposure, even though, they didn't have a lot of formal education, but we got newspapers. We had a library of books. See what I mean? I'm in the hills of Kentucky, but we had books in our house. We had newspapers.
And Grandma, we have books and books where she would cut out articles of black people. If anybody black did anything, she would cut out the articles.
We got
and put them in a
first
scrapbook.
Ebony magazine, I think, you've ever printed.
Right, and she saved every Ebony, every Jet magazine. I mean, it was so much pride, but and they kept it up. And I think one thing that we learned from that is substance, because my grandmother was always relevant. No matter what, with us as grandchildren, as a mother, she was always relevant, and she always knew what was going on. And I think that it was a lot deeper than just owning property. You look at these pictures, some of these pictures, and you see them with their big hats and dresses, and people are like, well, black people looking like that, that uppity feel from the pictures, but they weren't. They did it because it made them feel good for what they were doing. I mean, to go to college, to go to Hampton, my grandmother paid her sister's way through college. Her sister my aunt went to Hampton University in 1922.
She graduated
1922.
22.
And my grandmother paid for that, sent her money every month to make sure that she was okay. So you're absolutely right, education, but I think more than anything is they wanted you to mean something in life and to be relevant. And my mom and dad were very active during the 60s, and communicating that to them. And not only my mom and dad communicated to them about what they were doing in the 60s, and also communicated to us. They were kind of in the middle there, telling the older people, okay, let's end what's going on, and then telling us as younger people, let's make a new beginning to, again, make yourself relevant. This is why education is relevant.
The other thing I did.
Oh yeah, this wide picture.
Yes.
That's cool.
The other thing, we were visiting my aunt in Akron, and I guess I was about 11, 12, something like that. And so somebody was there from Toledo, Ohio, relative or whoever. And they said, oh yeah, they said, well, my daughter is going to, goes to camp, a Y camp, every year. And said, maybe Alice would like to come and go. So my mom said, oh, sure. He said, oh yeah, sure. So she called us the next summer. She called us and told us when the camp would start, or when starting time was, whatever. So my mom and dad drove us to, I went to Ashland, Kentucky, put me on the Greyhound bus, and I was, I guess, maybe 10 or 12. And told the driver, where I was going to Toledo, Ohio. and so anyway, so I went to this Y camp in Toledo, outside of Toledo on Lake Erie. And it was such a great experience. I mean, to experience the lake, Lake Erie, and it was, really integrated. It was predominantly white, of course. But anyways, and it was marvelous. I was exposed to, with playing tennis and all of these things that I hadn't been exposed to in Louisa. And it was just unbelievable. And the great thing about after we spent 2 weeks, and then when we got back to our friend's house in Toledo, they called and asked if we could come back because it was only one black kid in the whole camp, and they needed some more black kids. So they gave us 2 more weeks. So I spent a whole month in the Y camp,
right?
in Toledo. But I mean, outside of Toledo, it's a real popular place where it was. But anyway, so that experience, and then they put me back on the Greyhound bus, and I went back to. And one other experience, Marian Anderson was to appear in Charleston, West Virginia, and my mother found out about it. So we got on the bus, went to Ashland, Kentucky, which was 30-some miles. We spent the night, then we got on another bus, and we went to Charleston, West Virginia, which is, I don't know how many miles that is, but anyway. And we went to see Marian Anderson because my mother was determined that I hear Marian Anderson. And it really gives me chills because of thinking how she felt about that, And here we sit in the city where all of these things happen, and these are in almost walking distance of these kids, and nobody cares about exposing them to them.
Well, I think the irony of it is Grandma did all of this while she was at home with a shotgun, making sure the garden was safe. Mm-hmm. I mean, she was a woman. She had so many layers to her because she was able to do the cultural side with her daughter, but then she was able to be like Ma Kettle. I mean, she was able. There was nobody that she feared. There was nothing she couldn't cook. I mean, she would take a chicken and I would give her a chicken and a knife. You can blink your eyes. She just snapped the neck, and I mean, she did everything, but she taught my mom how to cook and everything, but she wanted my mom to be more than what she was. Even though she could have done some of those things, she could have done a lot of those things, but she made the sacrifice for my mom, for her 2 sons, for her sister. She sacrificed. She was always the foundation there that took care of everybody, and in so many ways. And like my uncles, they acquired some of the deeds to the land in Michigan and stuff, because my uncle's friends, when they went to Lincoln, would tell them about them not being able to pay taxes. So my uncles kind of got involved in that. But for her to look at a newspaper, oh, Mary Anderson, piano lessons. I want my daughter to take piano lessons. I mean, she was able to. She knew, she was focused, and she knew what she wanted her daughter to be. She knew the type of woman. She'd take mom shopping, have her get the best of the best when she was at Fisk, and so she knew exactly the type of woman that she wanted her to be to make it in the world. My mom did the same thing for me. I went to Fisk University. I had to take piano lessons. The tradition moved on, and then the same with my daughter. My daughter's at Howard. My daughter played, took flute lessons, and I shot me. So it just passes down. All of those things, all of that sacrifice passes down, from woman to woman. The cooking piece, learned how to cook from my mom. My mom learned how to cook from her mom. My grandmother, I never forget, my grandmother used to, when I was there and she was a little older, everybody knew she made these fresh biscuits and, homemade icing. When canned biscuits came out, she used to do the canned biscuits and hide. So nobody would know, and then, my mom, loaf bread was really big. I think I didn't do loaf bread till I was like a junior. My mom used to fix the bread and everything. So, then coming to me and, trying to do the same with the cooking and everything. So it's a continued, they left a legacy so deep. I would like for you all to visit Kentucky, because the legacy is so deep. I was sitting in a room of white men from 65, 70 on up, 80, talking to me about my family and going through when the Ku Klux Klan came. This is what happened. This is what your grandfather did. This is what happened. I mean, and it was just so phenomenal. And there was men that were millionaires and judges and farmers, and it was a wonderful thing to just be a part of that. And the biggest thing is the respect that went beyond racial boundaries.
And that was it. That was it. My parents, and they were respected. I mean, and that's the reason why they were able to do so much and accomplish so much, that they were really respected for who they were.
And I know you have some artifacts on the table that we haven't talked about, like the dog tags and the...
Yes, here's the dog tags.
Again.
These are Fred Freese. These are his dog tags from World War I. My uncle found them and gave them to my son. This is dated 1914. We don't know, exactly where he acquired them or how they were acquired.
Can you tilt that up?
Uh-huh.
And Just a
Okay.
little bit, yeah, so I can see the date. All right.
Also, what I didn't bring is I do have a gun. I think this is one of my favorites. These are my favorites right here, are the tins. Many of them are family members that we do not know, but I just think that those are just phenomenal. I think this one you can see a lot better. But just truly faces of the times, and the importance for them to maintain family records. What else do you have? You have a picture of Grandma over there, Mom. Isn't that a picture of Grandma?
Yeah, that's a good picture.
That's a younger picture of Grandma.
And this is
That's Lucille?
yeah, Lucille.
Okay.
And this is my dad, and he's dapper. He was Mr. Dapper there.
So that's
Oh,
what it, so,
yeah.
so this is in his uniform, his street uniform. All right.
Yes, now that was Mr. Dapper.
I can see how you could command respect.
Right.
And let me see some others.
Oh, that's Cousin Annie, isn't it?
No, that's Granny.
Okay, that's Amanda, her later days.
That was in her when she was in the 80s. And that's Louis. That was my brother. Right. Yeah.
So this is, Louis is the uncle that saved all of them?
Louis, her brother, Louis.
My brother.
uh-huh.
Okay.
But he was named after, yes, Louis, the grandfather,
Okay, and I think I saw it on a photo. So his is spelled Lewis. Okay.
And this is, and Corinthia, this is the Hampton graduate.
Okay.
I actually have just one more question too. So with everything that's been said here, what actually brought your family to Georgia?
Oh, well, what brought me to Georgia is that when my husband passed, we had been married 50 years. That's Luther. We've been married 50 years. And when he passed shortly after that, then I decided to move here to be with my daughter and her family.
So up until then you were in Louisville?
Well,
Where-
no,
where
I
were
was
you?
in
Ohio.
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 Cincinnati, Ohio. That's where after my husband was in service and as Luther, we settled in Ohio, Cincinnati, Ohio, because he was from Nashville originally, and me being from Louisa, that was close to both of us. So that's when we settled in Cincinnati after he got out of service.
And I had I don't want to assume, but he was in the Army,
Yes.
the branch of service for Luther, and we talked about him studying biology in college, but where did he go to college?
Tennessee State.
Okay. I think those are mine. Oh, and Karen, you mentioned, you said things changed with meth, but so I didn't get to come back to that idea.
Well, in Louisa, Kentucky, it's a small town in the Appalachian Mountains, and when with the meth epidemic, many of the treasured properties were burned out because of the meth labs. The neighborhoods, and the neighborhood that the house is in it's no more older people. It's not safe for anybody older to live alone. So a lot of the things that were established early on especially property-wise, are gone now because of the crime and all of that. So it's a different place now. Again, many of the older people are still there, but many people have left. I think there's only 2 black families there.
Yeah,
The
it's only 6 black people in Louisa now. So there's
And
nothing.
there's 2 families, isn't it?
Yeah, it's two
Two
family
families.
Joneses. But it's just different because now, see, we had a church. We had a AME church. And so that's where, we had all of our, when I graduated, of course, from the 8th grade, that's where we had the graduation, all the 8 of us. I mean, not me and 8 others. And so that was our thing, and we had a circuit minister. That means he only came maybe once a month. And that was interesting too, because he was a coal miner.
Right.
And but we always kept the ministers, and like if the presiding elder, that's part of our they would always stay with us because we were one of the few that had indoor plumbing. So, and then too, they love my mother's cooking, right?
Her.
Yes. So, and she would always prepare. And then, can I tell you another story about our pet pig? His name was, my dad went over to
Caleb. So you said
Caleb.
his name was Caleb.
Caleb.
Mm-hmm.
And one evening, Daddy went over to the barn, because then we had a barn and all that stuff. A barn, and he came back into the house and he said, "Look what I have here." He said, and he had this little pet pig like this, holding it in his hand like that. And he said the sow killed all of the litter except this one. And so we said, "Oh yes, Daddy, yes." So we took him, and of course we cleaned him off and all that, and Mom got a medicine dropper, whatever, to help feed him. And then we put him in a box and whatever, and then, he gradually got to the baby bottles and all of that. And so he got to be a pretty good size. And one time, I told you I always start as the presiding elder of church. He came, and so when he opened the door and he came in, he saw this good sized pig about like this, laying in front of the fireplace next to the dog. He said, "Oh, well." And we said, "Yes, that's we said, "Yes, Daddy," we told him the story. And he said, "Well, have you named him?" And we said, "No, we haven't got a name." He said, "Well, call him Caleb." He said, "That's a good biblical name." So that was where Caleb started to be a part of our lives. So we would bathe him in the bathtub.
One of the family.
We were one of the family, and of course he won. And then we would take him when the fire would come with, and prizes and stuff. So he'd always get a prize and all. So he started growing up, and so when he got a certain age, we put him too big, too low, me in front of the fireplace. We put him in a chicken house, chicken house. No, he ran around with the chickens and geese and stuff. So my brother Andy, he was a mischievous one. He got out one day, and so my mother said, "Andy, put him back in the yard, in the chicken yard." So Andy started chasing Caleb, and he chased him. He ran after him to up in the town of Louisa. And the mom got a call from the drugstore man, druggist. He said, Lucille, you better send Fred up here to get this pig out of my
He had a store?
Yes, he was in the drugstore. Cause Annie had chased him all the way uptown to the drugstore.
He's better be
And
somebody's dinner.
so he said, Lucille, you better have Fred come and get this pig out of my place, or else I'm going to have ham for dinner. So of course, Daddy went up, and this man here, Daddy went up and got Caleb and put him in the truck and brought him home. And of course, Andy paid the price for doing that. But Caleb was our love. And he was one of the best pets we ever had. But even when he grew up to be a hog, we didn't want to put him with the rest of the hogs, but we had to. But we would go over and he would suck our hands and whatever. And when I tell this story to kids, when I was teaching anyway, kids, they said, well, what happened did you all kill him? And I said, no, but we gave him to another man that took care of him. But they, of course, slaughtered him because when he got to be a regular hog. But that was the story of Caleb. But he was, and he was just beautiful. He was beautiful.
See a pig's life in front of the fireplace.
In front, not in it. In front of the fireplace, right?
I'm like, oh,
I just want to, I guess, backtrack a little. Just ask a few more questions about
sure.
his father, Mr. Freese. How did he actually return home from his service?
By ship.
By ship. It
They
has,
shipped him back.
yeah, on the boat. Here, right here. This is where, and it decides, it tells you what side he was on and
His
bunk number and.
Well, what was the name of the ship? Is
They
that
don't
on
say. Oh yes, it does. USS Acorn, Ancon.
How was he received by the family and the community?
Oh, they were happy to see him. They were happy to see him.
Was there a party or anything?
Well, I don't know. I don't really know. But he was very proud. He was very proud. He was a proud person.
Was there any issue with him readjusting to civilian life?
No, I don't think so. Because he was able to, get back in the groove with, and with my grandpa, he was such a master, and
What probably happened, looking at the dates, is they probably lived with Amanda and Louis Freese.
yeah, all of us lived in the same
when
house.
he went back, so when he went back, his
Yeah,
family,
all
they
of
were
them.
able to, grandma probably stayed with them while he was gone. So he
Yeah,
was probably able to just come
Yeah.
back.
yeah,
And
all of us lived in the same house,
No.
2-story.
But I guess this
Or
is
bedroom.
the question of, so you're African American military, you serve your country, you go abroad, you see, lifestyles that you're not able to live at home. So was
And-
any,
and-
did you
yeah.
hear any stories or
And that's probably-
readjustments there?
yeah, so that's probably why they were the way they were with the kids, because remember he bought like a Lincoln. I mean, he started buying cars. I mean, they did a lot of things that, to your point, a lot of African Americans weren't usually aware of. So that was
That's true.
probably the foundation of how they grew. And remember, each time each one of them would leave, my uncles, when they would leave, they would come back, share with my mom, share with grandma, and mom would move forward. So it appeared that each time family members were exposed, they were able to come back and you know, tell other family members and let them know. So I would think, but you know, and I think this is real funny is that now that I remember, and I don't see the pictures on the houses now, but now that I remember, there was always a flag in front of the house.
Mm-hmm.
There was always a flag in front of the house. So, you know, when we sit down and talk about it, is that, you know, he probably did have a lot of mixed emotions about it, because on one hand, he talked about how awful he was treated by the Red Cross and things like that, but there was always that flag and let me tell you, for the in 1976, the bicentennial year, my grandmother, and I'm surprised my mom doesn't have any of her quilts around here, but my grandmother was so involved with that celebration. I mean, she made dresses. She had to wear the long dresses where you were, you know, they enacted the whole, you know, during that time, and she made quilts. I mean, it was huge. It was huge participation with that. So, and their political participation. I mean,
Yes.
they were political people through and through, you know, and
Yes. They were so, I mean, when I was there, when my first child, Kevin, was born in Louisa. So anyway, cause you know, church was still in service.
Okay.
So anyway, Mom and Dad came to get me at the hospital. And so, when we got home, Mom said, Dad, take Kevin in the house. She said, oh no, give me Kevin and I'll take him in the house. He said, but you take Alice to vote. And so I said, okay. And so when I got up to the polling place, you know, small town, some of the nurses was in there voting, and they said, what in the hell are you doing here? I said, either I vote or else I wouldn't have a place to stay. And I voted. And they were that strong. I mean, on election night, we would go up, and Daddy would go up and park either the truck or the car up there, up where they come outside and tell the voting how the voting was going. And at night we'd go up there and hear all of the voting, and how they would come out on the courthouse, and they had a platform, I think, to say the voting. My mother was, I mean, I had to register. And when I went up to register, they said, what are you doing? I said, I have to register or else I won't have any place to stay. They were that strong in politics. I mean, every voting time, we were at the courthouse listening to them count the votes. So voting and politics has always been a part of me and part of a belief.
How was spirituality in the family? Going to church? Or
Yes, going to church. Now my dad, he wasn't a big church person, but my mother, you know, we were very church and Sunday school. Church and Sunday schools, AME church.
Okay.
And my mother was always, and the exposure to that too, because sometimes when they'd have conferences and things at other places, and I had a picture of my mom she was represented at Kentucky State College as a representative in one of their gatherings.
And I thought you showed me a picture of a church. You said it was a white church, but you all got married in it. But
Yeah, that was the white church. That's where Fred Vinton was born. He was buried there. You know, who was what was it?
Vincent, the Supreme Court Justice.
What's the name of the church?
Louisa Methodist Church.
Yes, and yes, that was quite. I don't have here a picture of my wedding, but you can see.
The wedding part was only black people with the wedding.
No, but I had some more. But anyway, but coming out of the streets, people were standing across the streets. The streets were, people were standing like it was a parade coming through.
Like a celebrity getting married.
This evening.
Your beauty queen.
But yeah, my grandmother used to send me to church, and I would be the only, the church was like across the street diagonal, and I would have to go to church and didn't know anybody there, but I had to go to church. But I never, she was more of a spiritual, for me, I guess because she was older, she was more of a spiritual person than a religious person. I don't ever remember her quoting the Bible or anything like that, but I, say the blessing, the spiritual piece of it was more of her foundation. And growing up, with my mom, church was not just church, it was political, it was, it was a mean for us to learn, it was our friends, so I think they carried that on with the spiritual piece of it. And understanding, what you could do within that institution.
And I know we haven't brought in the photos, the panoramic and the nurse, and I don't know.
Yeah. Now we don't know who the nurse is.
What's that?
In the big picture, let me bring this over here. And Mom, you can
We
show
had
it.
to find that.
Now, I think that the nurse, and Mom, you can hold that up for her. I think that the nurse is related to, which I left that other picture of Bud.
Can you turn it around?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, here it is. Okay, we got these two pictures at the same place around the same time. And let me bring this picture in. Now, these two pictures we got around the same time, the same place. So I'm thinking that
you got them
in Kentucky, these two were together.
Okay.
They were framed, they were together. So I'm thinking that somehow these two.
And actually, can you come, because it's got the blinds, there we are, yeah. Can you tilt it forward towards me? Actually, let's a little bit more. Tilt it forward.
Okay, I got you.
Yes, that spotlight is.
It's the flash.
Yes, well, it was this, and then when the flash got on it.
So I'm thinking that these two, so we're going to have to find out who that nurse is. And then this is the cream de la cream, I think. And this is
We had to have this read.
yours.
This
And if
has to-
somebody has it, don't touch it, let's try not to touch it as much as possible. But this is
It's true.
Grandpa's troop.
We had to find somebody.
And you said someone, you still don't know where he is in the photo.
No, I don't. We're gonna have to get a magnifying glass and really.
Because Andy showed me one time,
Oh,
and I,
yeah.
Yeah, I
Actually, it might be better because it doesn't have the flash.
Okay. No, look at this reflection.
I'll send you that this one. I just know like
The
lines.
lines there.
Oh,
I,
yeah, that looks like good.
I think, looking at these pieces here, I think a research person could find out exactly,
That's a postcard.
exactly what,
These all together.
because some of it didn't, some of those papers have what troop or something he was in.
Yeah, they all have the troop and everything.
Where?
Over here. That's the cards.
Yeah, I think like through census records and the wartime records, like since World War One, it's now at a point where
They
you
have
like
a
you said,
serial number.
right, you can go look that up and
Yeah,
get
his
some more
serial number,
information.
and that would probably be the easiest thing,
Mm-hmm.
is the serial number. That's the most important thing, and it's good we have it on paper.
Because it's hard to read
Because-
the dog tag.
Well, no, it's not.
You're still there?
The serial number is really clear. Really clear. But it's not the same as what they have here.
Really?
Nope. Nope. It's not at all. And these are different serial numbers. So, yeah.
Cause see, with him getting, he was promoted there too.
That's interesting.
The reflection question.
Okay,
We have just this
Okay.
last group of reflections and then we'll get out of your hair.
I know he didn't really tell you much about his experiences while serving, but
And this might also be your, so she might reflect on your husband in that time.
Right.
So,
how did the wartime experiences affect his life?
Who, my husband?
Yeah.
My husband.
Either,
Or
this
either.
is either one.
Well,
So,
whoever fits in.
so you know which one you would remember.
No, cause I didn't know that, as far as my dad is concerned, my dad, because I just loved him, he loved me, and he thought I was the apple of his eye. Cause I was the only girl, see, so I was.
That's like one sister.
But as far as my husband, I don't think it, well, number one, the only reflection or whatever, by being in service, and he got transferred when he got to Chicago and working at the hospital as the lab tech. And he met people there that encouraged him in going into that area. And to be able to go into, get a job at Christ Hospital doing cancer research at that time, that was a plus as far as him being in service. Because I don't know whether he would go in that direction or not, but that was what set him in that direction of doing research.
And was that, when was that? So what year?
That was, let me see,
Would
that
have
was
Had to be 60s,
60s,
59,
in the
60s.
60s. It'd have to be, because we got married in 56, right?
Mm-hmm. My
And
brother
it-
was born in 57.
57. And he was in service. Because I don't have any information on his service record. But that was in the 60s. Yeah, the 60s.
Okay.
In the 60s.
And then so, were you, because I heard you were raising family in Kentucky, or were you in Chicago or Cincinnati? I'm a little...
She was in Kentucky when my brother was born.
Okay.
And then when my father was stationed in Chicago, she moved
Went
to
to
Chicago
Chicago.
to
Yes,
be with
yeah.
him. And
He
then
was
they both-
the baby.
Mhm.
He was only months old when I moved to Chicago.
Okay.
He was, that's the first time I ever saw my father cry.
Mm-hmm.
Is when they put me on the train to leave with Kevin, the baby. And I mean, to really cry.
Mm-hmm. Losing his baby.
Yeah.
And I married a Navy man.
See, I didn't have to ask you. We're gonna come back to that
But yes, that was, yeah, Kevin was only, maybe less than 6 months old when I left Kentucky.
one.
Yeah, he was only about, what I go for a checkup.
3 weeks, like 3 weeks.
No, it was longer. I was home with the baby for,
Or maybe 3
Maybe.
months back then.
no, it wasn't 3 months. I wasn't there. Or maybe a couple months.
So again, as a question asked about wartime experience and how it affected your life, I'm remembering, so this story is he could have potentially been shipped off anywhere, but your
Yeah.
parents intervened to make sure that he stayed there, which then,
Yes.
and then how is it, because some of what we talk about is migration, so here it is, you're from rural Kentucky, what was it like now going to Chicago? I'm imagining that's very different.
Yes. But see, I went to high school in Akron, Ohio.
Okay, all right. So it wasn't complete
The
culture shock.
rubber
Okay,
plants
right.
right there. I passed
Okay,
by
all right.
Goodyear, one of the rubber plants every morning. So that experience. Oh, but my experience in Akron was tremendous
Mhm.
for me. To move to Akron, to move from Louisa to Akron, rubber plants, smell, all of that.
Mhm.
I cried for 6 months every night because of the smell and traffic and all of that. So it was tremendous for me, the move.
Mhm.
Although I was living with my aunt, who was loving, but to move from the type of family that I was in, small town, loving, everybody loving me, you know what I mean, and all of that. It was very difficult. It was extremely difficult. And the surroundings, Rubber Plant was in walking distance of where I lived with my aunt, and the smell and all of that. That's what, I keep saying that because that's what got to me more than anything else.
Smell.
I was still in loving with my aunt, a loving environment, but that was
So you're
very
saying the
difficult.
move to Chicago was very easy compared to that?
Yeah, I didn't have any problems with Chicago because of course I was with my loving husband.
Pretty lovely.
And all those good things of Chicago. And we met some great people. And especially where he worked, of course, there was a lot of servicemen.
Mhm.
And they started to to us. And one of us was an officer. And he was just really great.
What was this person's name?
Hmm?
What was this person's name? Do you remember?
Mr. James.
Okay.
And he was we lived in a basement apartment, but in Chicago they had a real nice name for basement apartment. I can't remember what it was, but I invited him over. It was 3 rooms, right? 2 rooms. 3 rooms, but we shared the kitchen with 2 other people and stuff. But anyway, so I invited him over, he and his wife over for dinner. And he came in dressed in his full uniform. Can you believe that? Dressed in his full uniform in our 2 rooms. They had a living room, bedroom, and shared a kitchen. I thought that was so, it was heart-wrenching.
So respected your home.
That he respected us. And he knew that we lived in a basement apartment, right? And he knew that we moved in 2 rooms. But he came in full dress. When I opened the door, when church opened the door, I could just fell away. And everything church had bought for the living room, he had got at Walgreens or someplace up on Cottage Grove. And the drapes were, plastic.
And they had my brother in a drawer.
And when we first moved there, when I got there, he hadn't gotten anything for Kevin to sleep in. And so we put him in a dresser drawer. And then when church came home, he bought the bassinet. And we used that. And then we finally, decided he has to come in the bassinet. And so we went shopping for a baby bed. And of course, we went to the most expensive store in Chicago, right? To look for a baby bed. And we found this bed. And I said, oh, this is great. And it only cost $36. And Church said, $36? I said, yes. And he said, so we called in and said, oh, we like this one. And I said, that's such a good price. I said, it's only $36 or is that $40? He said, miss, that's for the mattress. So, so we came back and we called because our landlord on the first floor, landlord, they babysitted, of course. Mm-hmm. So we told them what had happened, and they said, well, the people next door have 2 kids, and they're older, and she said, I'm sure. So make a long story short, the lady came over, and she was Mexican or whatever. I couldn't hardly understand what she said, but she sold us a beautiful baby bed for $12. But I guess that's true of our life. We ran into people, the landlords, babysitted for us. Mm-hmm. See what I mean? And I think that, when I think of that, things like that, we were just blessed, that they did, that they babysitted for us so we could go out and enjoy Chicago, which we did.
What are some life lessons that your father or husband learned from their service in the military?
I guess to take advantage of the resources that they were exposed to, the good resources, because they were out there. And you just have to grab off of them or make use of them. And some of those resources are not always money, it's people. And I think the other thing of being kind to other people. Because with my husband and with my grandmother, grandfather, all of us, they were always kind to other people. They didn't make difference like in the hills of Kentucky, you know, people like that. They were kind and generous to people. And I think that has followed through all of my life. And like the people like with I was just telling you about them babysitting for us. But that was because that we were when my landlord would come down in the basement, I would talk to him, and you know he would tell me stories about his life. so it's that, and that is so important in living life. You what is that saying?
You repeat yourself?
Yeah, you reap what you sow, and they
You replug?
You reap what you sow.
Reap. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
yeah, of being kind and generous to other people.
I recall, you know, your father being, I guess, kind of an enigma when it came to the military with, you know, not supporting the Red Cross, but he still had the flag out. So, like, how did the service impact his feelings toward the military?
Well, number one, he didn't talk much about it. As I said, he didn't talk that much about it. But he certainly didn't, you know, march against it or say any negative. I don't think I ever heard, you know, I think I never heard my father really, quote unquote, curse somebody out or call them bad names, you know. But although he did, if someone would, you know, say something or whatever, he always had the gun in the car.
In the truck, right?
In the truck. So really, he didn't have to curse somebody out or say nothing to
A
him.
man of few words.
If he could use you as his voice, what do you think his message would be to the future generations that will hear this interview?
Now repeat that again, please.
If he could use your voice to speak to future generations that'll see this interview, what do you think he'll say?
What he would say?
Yeah.
He would want me to say, as I said before, be kind to other people. Be kind to other people, because you never know, you may have to ask that other person for help. Or, let me see, what would he want me to say? I think the words, though, is, I keep saying, bringing that way, be kind. But I'm trying to think of, in today's life, of you as a young man, what would I want you to do in the relationship to other people? I don't know. I think I still go back with being kind and generous to other people or the people around you. Because I feel today some of that is not, people do not do that. And the slightest, I'm not saying to be something brainstorming, but just general generosity of helping people. Helping old people like me cross the street. Or helping somebody, or show somebody a directions when they seem lost. Or smiling and not frowning at all times. And just general simple things like that. Of just being showing kindness to your fellow man. And I don't mean just for black folks or whatever, but for people. And looking them straight in the eye, like I'm looking at you. Because sometimes people find it difficult to look a person straight in the eye. Or look it straight in the eye and smile. And say, have a good day. That's all. And when you get my age, you look for that. Just for somebody to help you across the street or open the door for you and smile and say, have a good day.
Thank
Make
you.
you smile. I guess, is there anything else that you feel that we haven't covered that you'd like to?
No, I think we've covered about all. I just, off with the record though, I mean, not, but I'm so sorry about the home place being tore down.
So that's all, that happened?
No,
Or
the
the-
process of,
Process of,
Mhm.
but I know I have no control.
Mhm.
But I guess I just want to go down to Louisville, Kentucky and get something from that house. Something that I can put here. Like the stairway, it has they had a post and half of it like this, built like, maybe get that to bring back. Because you imagine that is the house that my grandfather built in the 1800s. That is the house that he came from a slave and built that house. And added to it. And did all of those things. And that he built that for what, 4, 5 generations, right?
It's been, and this
Yes.
is the home where you all are posted in front of the smokehouse, right?
Yes.
Mhm. And this is the deed.
Yes.
He bought for $36.
And for him to do all of that he paid cash for it. And he built that house. And all of us enjoyed every minute of it being there. That's a real regret, but that's the way things go. Because I thought about it when they were talking about the building over at Morris Brown.
Gaines Hall. Mhm.
Yes, I thought about that.
Around
That
the
they
same
said they were
time.
going,
Mhm.
that they were going to save it,
Mhm.
but he was quite a man, And this is
Louis Freese.
you got this.
Mhm.
This is a picture of my grandpa.
Well, we thank you for your time.
Yeah,
We
well, I
thank-
enjoyed
We
it.
thank you for your relative
Yes.
service to our country. And more importantly, we thank you ladies for keeping the family history and sharing it with us.
Yes. And as you see, we had a lot of help because they saved all of this. And especially all of those deeds to the houses and all of that. So I'm hoping that the next generation, Drew, has my grandson in there, and Jerrison and Savannah, we'll save some of it too. So they can tell their children about their great-great-grandfather. History. Okay.
Does your camera go off?
It did.